income just becomes the fuel for these other things. If you want to have the lifestyle that you want to have, it needs to be funded. If you want to have the experiences you want to have, they need to be funded. If you want to serve in the biggest way possible that you could dream of, that probably needs to be funded in some sort of way too.
Welcome back to Life at 10 Tenths, where we inspire you to live at the pinnacle of your ability and purpose. Matt Benelli is here. My name is Garrett Fry, and we are jumping right into this. Oh, I shouldn't say, as we jump right in, as you're listening to this episode today, if you like what we're talking about, if you're like, this is awesome, this is what I needed to hear today, please go like, subscribe. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts. Check us out anywhere you're listening to right now. And if you want to share with anybody that you feel might have value in this, please share. Matt, good morning, sir.
Good morning to you, man. Oh, man, I'm pumped because we get to talk a little bit about goals today as we are going through, as the time of recording this, we're about to do our third session on our business planning GPS breakdown, which is really, really fun. And we kind of get to talk a little bit about what happened on session one, some things that came up, which is really cool to see, and how can we actually break down some goals, man. So I'm excited to get into it. But how are you today?
I'm good, man. Everything is really, I love business planning. It's funny is that it's so cool to watch people go through this process and what comes up for them, what's important to them. Also, there's a lot of baggage people have around business planning. And for me, it's like being able to find a path for them where they can go. Business planning has always been this daunting thing that's like, oh my gosh, it's business planning. I really got to do a business plan. To all of a sudden make it a journey that they can go through and go like, this is really cool. Like, I'm learning a lot about myself. I'm seeing a path start to formulate in front of me. And all of a sudden they've got a year that is built out where they're like, okay, I can do this. Like this seems obtainable. And it's just interesting to watch as people grow through a very short amount of time. It's not a year's worth of growth. It's a very short amount of time of, business planning to like, possibilities. Like, how cool is this? And then once they cross that threshold, Matt, business planning becomes easier and easier every year where they start looking forward to it. A lot of people just haven't been shown the right way.
Well, and it should be easier year after year, right? Like, we shouldn't have to reinvent the wheel every single time, because if you build a plan that works, then great. We could run that plan again the next year with some adjustments, which is why we're calling it a GPS. And what's going to be fun today, we're going to break down kind of our goal setting process today. And a lot of times people will start their business plan with, I have an income goal. And they just like slap that on the top of a page, which could be used in this breakdown that we're going to talk about. But they usually use that as the kickoff of their entire planning process. And then what we find is actually not as many people are so motivated by that goal. That goal becomes a fuel for something else. And we did a little survey on our first session, just kind of a simple poll of seeing like how people were motivated, and that had some interesting results, Garrett.
Oh, I found this so fascinating. When we did this poll, we threw it up just basically saying, what are you driven by? And income was one of them. That was one on the list, top one. Experiences. And then it was
lifestyle.
Lifestyle is what we put out for the third one. And it was wild. We had a good amount of people. This is not like a small sample size, but a good amount of people on this call. And I was watching the poll start to grow out, and it was one after another looking at lifestyle and my brain keeps jumping back and forth. Lifestyle and experiences. Yeah. Jeez, where am I this morning?
I guess arguably could be captured under anything could be fit underneath it, but it was like you see lifestyle, experience, lifestyle, experience. And we're like, wait, is anybody going to say
income
anything
wasn't
about money?
Touched? Like there's nobody. And
0%, zero respondents said income. Now we did say, what is the one thing if you had to choose one,
yes.
Right? I think it highlights, Garrett, that income just becomes the fuel for these other things. If you want to have the lifestyle that you want to have, it needs to be funded. If you want to have the experiences you want to have, they need to be funded. If you want to serve in the biggest way possible that you could dream of, that probably needs to be funded in some sort of way. Now, the funding doesn't necessarily have to be income, but hey, we're all here to sell real estate and make some money through income. And so that's what we're talking about here, right?
So I started, as you were kind of talking about, I mean, we're going to spend most of the time talking about goals and what drives people, but it's interesting, Matt, as you're talking about, like, you don't need to redo the plan every single year. Like, it's not about reinventing everything from scratch. And I'm going to take this back into racing. We haven't gone into racing in a while in cars, but just for fun,
It's been
I
like
was
a
sitting
whole
here
two
thinking about,
episodes.
like, you can set a goal, set a goal to be to race cars, and I'm looking at like my world is that there was a point at which that was a very big goal. We had no car, we had no team, never been on a track. I have no gear, we have nothing. I have tools, is what I have, and then we were kind of starting off at that place. And then when you write a plan for what you want that year to look like, you start going, okay, well, we're going to need this. We're going to need a car. We're going to need these pieces, this stuff. I got to get a race suit. We got to get all of our gear so that we can officially be on a track and we can race. What's interesting is that when you go to the next year and the year after that, you're not starting from, okay, again, we need to go find a car. We need to go get our gear. There's some stuff we need to get because seatbelts expire. Your fire extinguishers in your car, those expire over time. So you got to kind of know what are my maintenance and upgrade things I need to do. But for the most part, then you start looking at like, what do we want to do to the car this year? Like, okay, it's not a new car, but maybe this year we want to do this and this. Maybe this year we want to change up our approach to how we're racing an endurance race. And this is where I think business planning becomes really fun because it's not building from scratch, but it's saying, let's look at all these tools and all these things that we have already and go, how do we want to just raise the bar on this? And this is where these goals start to come out of it of like, what do we need to make that next level happen? And you brought up a gentleman that you coach, and for him, it is income. Like he is still going like, my goal is to make more. He's also doing really well. So now it's just kind of like this, like, what if?
Yeah, there's a competition factor that gets there, and I think that's what's interesting in the underlying what's behind the goal, right? And then what's behind the thing behind the goal as well when you get down to it, because okay, money becomes a goal, which then there's a competition factor, but behind it, it's because I know that's going to fuel these other things, right? And that's the case for him. And I was actually thinking about your car analogy here, which I think is actually really great for real estate agents, because a lot of agents will say, well, do I want to build a team? Do I want to do solo? And this process we're talking about is really great for understanding that, because if you're good with being like, hey, I'm just the solo car driver. I got my car. I'm going to do my own maintenance. I'm going to take it out to the track. If it works, great. If it doesn't, okay, I'm going to try to fix it and get back out there for some laps. But if you want to go race in professional race car driving, you cannot do that.
Yeah.
You need to level up and have a team but it's not like just having a small team. You have a massive team, right? And I'm not saying that agents need to go build massive teams, but my point is when you're going through this process year over year, it's identifying, okay, do I really want to be at that level? And then what are the things that I need? And then what are the actions? What are the standards? And you get to actually go through a constructive process of leveling up versus just trying to go from, well, I just bought a car to now I'm racing professionally with a massive team, right?
Well, and I'm thinking, so like there's really three of us that are kind of decision makers on the team for our racing. And it's funny, about a year ago, we were all sitting around and we're like, what if we turned our car into a rally car? Like, get it off the road. There's a rally circuit and there's rally tracks around us, dirt tracks. And we're like, we've got a car we could do it with. We could totally put dirt tires on it. We could raise the suspension up a little bit and we could go out there and rally this thing and go have fun on a totally different level. And it was fun because in the process of race planning, just like business planning, we sat down and we weighed out all the possibilities of like, hey, what if we did this? What if we did that? What would we have to do here? And at the end of it, we're like, okay, it's a dumb idea. We'll just get a different car. Get a different car. We'll make it a rally car. This one's going to stay with what it is because we can show up and we continually go race this thing and go have fun. And we just need a whole nother thing if we're going to do that. And I think that's the interesting part you get into when you start planning. And it's really actually, it's a big part of what we're going to be doing today in our business planning is starting to look at what are all the possibilities? What is the things that are going to get us to these goals? And then start stress testing stuff to like, is that really where we want to go, and really start looking at it. And again, as we're sitting here talking about it, Matt, I'm thinking back to all these funny conversations that we had where our race car almost turned into a rally race car. Didn't happen though.
I love it. I love it. Well, so let's talk about this kind of goal mapping process that we use, and we're going to be using today with everybody in our session. Which, by the way, if you guys want to see these sessions, we do offer a 7-day free trial into the 11 Circle, which is our coaching program. And it's all recorded. It's all there. By the time this is released, everything is posted. So you could get in there for a 7-day free trial and get the entire thing and build your business plan and be out. Now, we think you'll like what you see and you want to hang out in there, but just head over to lifeat10tenths.com and go and grab your 7-day trial for the 11 Circle.
That's a cheat. It's literally a cheat code is the way I keep joking about it, Matt, is like if you're sitting in your office, if you're sitting in your office as an office manager and you're like, gosh, I wish my agents would do business planning or get involved in business planning, like it's there. Like go direct them because they can jump in there for 7 days, take all the stuff and then bounce out if they want to. And Matt and I are okay with that. If that's what the value is there, that you're like that's what I needed and you're good. Please, we're grateful that you came into our world, and again, we'd love it if you decided to stay. So
yeah, absolutely.
So looking at goals, Matt, let's jump back into this.
Yeah. So I mean, I think a lot of times people will set a goal, and whatever the goal is, you can use an income goal if you want for this, because sometimes it's easier to understand that. People say, okay, the typical goal planning process I see at Garrett is, here's my goal. These are the things that I'm going to do to get to that goal. The end.
Yep.
And it's like, oh. Okay, well, there's probably some more things that we won't. No, I just got to do this. And how many people say, I just got to do the things. Like, I know what to do. I just got to do it. And then I'm going to hit the goal. And then they don't hit the goal. And so we're missing several components here. And the first step is, here's the goal. What are all of the things that you could do, just like you identified with the rally race? What are all the things that you could do to achieve that goal? What are all the actions that you could take? Daily actions, weekly actions, even if it's project-based actions. What are all the things? You start with that, but then we got to narrow that down. We can't just say, hey, I'm going to do 100 different things. We want to get focused. And I suggest, Garrett, what we have on our sheet here is to like, hey, let's get into like 3 specific actions. Let's break down 3 specific things that we're going to do in order to accomplish that goal. And so if you're thinking, gosh, this goal is too big, maybe break that goal down into a sub goal of the bigger goal. And then you can break those actions down and you can see how this starts to build kind of an organizational structure of actions to get to your goal, which is part of the point. But that's the first step.
Yeah, and I would look at it as, and maybe we want to throw a goal on the table here and kind of kick it around together just for the fun of it. Like because I look at like, you know, we talked about income goal, and that's not, I mean, it is a driver for a lot of people, but it's not the number one driver. But let's just take a goal of like, I've always wanted to do a Christmas party. I've always wanted to do an event at the end of the year, holiday party, where I'm going to have people show up and what that's going to be and what that's going to look like. And I think you need to start off of like, okay, so if we look at that, what are all the different directions this thing could go and what could it look like? You know, who do I want to have at the party? How big do we want this thing to be? And we just start narrowing it down to like, what is the obtainable side of this that is really going to give us the impact that we want to have?
Well, let's even, one thing we should probably start with is taking a step back on that one and saying, how do we make the Christmas party a SMART goal, right? Yeah. How do we make it, very specific, measurable? How do we make it achievable? How do we make it relatable to what our vision is, our core values? And then how do we make it time-based? Well, Christmas party, holiday party, pretty time-based right there. Well, that's probably going to happen sometime in December,
yep.
Right?
Yeah.
Let's make it specific. What is it really? Is it, I'm just going to have a party? Well, where is it? How big do you want this to be? What is the experience or the feelings that you want people to get out of it? How are you going to be able to measure whether it's a success or not? Is it based on a certain number of people who attend? Is it a certain number of thank yous that you send afterwards? Is it a certain number of thank yous that you're receiving, that how you're measuring the success of this? And then obviously, hopefully, if you're thinking of the goal, it is probably achievable. That's like the middle part of SMART goals, Garrett, where I'm like, well, if I can think it, I could probably achieve it. We just need to make sure it's achievable in the time frame that I set. Because if you're saying today and it's December 2nd, I'm going to do this party. Well, okay, we're going to have to really adjust what that is like, particularly if it's like, I'm going to have it this Saturday, right? Versus it's June and you're planning the party for the middle of December. Well, hey, we can do a lot of different things when we have more runway there. But designing it as a SMART goal, now it's going to be a lot easier to extract what are all those actions that I want to do to make this thing come to fruition.
Yeah, and I like the way you're looking at that, Matt, because again, like I watch people, especially getting involved too late with a holiday party. All of a sudden, it's like, yeah, I've got this grand vision. Maybe it's even something you've done in the past, but you start looking at the time frame and the runway you have right now, and it's like, yeah, that ain't happening this year. That's not going to happen in that way. But then you need to sit back and say, but I still want to make an amazing impact, and I still want to show up for my people, and I still want to have this. Well, maybe it's not going to be this massive celebration and bash. Maybe it's going to be, pictures with Santa Claus. Maybe that's what we're doing this year. We're going to have Santa come in and we're going to have everybody come to the office. And that's how we're going to do it. Maybe it's something just maybe a little bit more obtainable, but we don't want to let it go by without having it happen. And so I think, again, as you start to break down these goals and you really start to figure out, what is my threshold? Where am I at? What do I want to obtain here? Apply SMART to it, which I think is a great way to look at goals. And then you can come up with a plan of how we're going to act on this. And then you need to map it out. You've got to figure out what are all the key points that are going to make this happen. Because, Matt, I've watched many people that have a grand vision and a grand idea, and they start getting closer. And all of a sudden they're like, yeah, I don't have any people that are actually RSVPing to this party. And I'm like, did you actually tell anybody about it? Like,
well, and I think when you're setting up the goal, if it's like, hey, I want to have 100 people to come enjoy, cookies and wine and Santa pictures, and I want everybody to walk away with a big smile on their face, a candy cane, a toy for their kid, not the other way around. We're not giving kids for toys. We're giving toys to kids. Like, this is a big idea. And when you get to the point, you're like, I don't know if enough people are going to attend. It's like, well, did we do the actions over the year to make sure our database was big enough in order to have the response that would have 100 people show up to this, right? Because I look at when the actions are leading up to this, there's a few critical actions that you might have as some of these three, which might be just around getting this party set up. But you also might have one that's like, hey, I need to make sure that I am engaging and growing my database over this year, engaging my neighborhood and growing it, because maybe you want to have the big neighborhood Christmas party. And so then, okay, great. That is a different type of goal than I think anybody would think of when it comes to just hosting a party, right?
Oh,
but
yeah.
When you have that vision of what it is, the actions become a lot more clear.
So I'm going to use a very specific goal around a party and an event like this. So Dwan's last name for some reason is slipping my mind. He's at the group in Fort Collins. He's a managing broker there. And Dwan is a veteran. And this year he decided to throw a veterans party that I have people telling me about how amazing it was and how incredible it was. And, I started to ask more questions about this event, Matt, and it is at the Embassy Suites. You are all welcome to come to celebrate. Tickets are $30 a person. And at the end of the day, like, they're all there to celebrate veterans. I asked them, I said, how many people is this event willing and able to hold? He goes, 600 people is what they kind of have their mind wrapped around that can show up and be involved in this event. This is not like it. That started off as a goal of doing a veterans event and a veterans party, a big goal. There's a lot of people that when they start going, they're not thinking 600 people at the Embassy Suites and all these pieces that it's going to take to make this all come together. And what is the cost and what do we charge to make that work? So people will still want to attend, but we can still cover the cost of an Embassy Suites ballroom at 600 people. It's not a cheap thing.
Yeah, no, it's not. And in that where you might have an income goal within, the goal to get to that goal, right? And Dwayne Roquette, that's his last name, right?
There you go. So you
great guy, by the way. If you guys are ever in Colorado and Fort Collins area, definitely reach out to him.
He's amazing.
So Garrett, we take these actions, we identify a few critical actions to get us toward this goal. The next step then is to set a standard of what that action means, right? And so, if it's a general, like, let's say you're setting goals for your business and it's an income goal, you're like, hey, I need to talk to I need to engage my sphere, right? Okay, great. What's the minimum standard? How many people per week? What's the method that you're going to use? What is the standard that you're going to hold yourself to as a minimum standard to
Yep.
get there? So with like the party, it's like we need to develop relationships so we can fill a 600 person ballroom. It's like, okay, well that means each week for the 6 months leading up to this event, I need to be engaging very specifically the veteran community at this volume via phone, text, email, whatever, right?
Yep.
And that now becomes the standard. So in June and July, you're already focused on doing the things that are going to provide the results for that party come December. And you
Yeah.
can break that down for each and every goal.
And it's not like the party's been created and now how are we going to have people come? It's starting that way early of saying, I have this minimum standard of I need to just start just announcing it, letting people know, by the way, when this is coming up here in November, we're going to have this party going on. We're going to have this event going on. You just start working it out so that all of a sudden it's like, okay, this thing is happening. We know people are going to be there. And then you also have your minimum standard of like, okay, what are the time frames that I need to start getting this thing actually prepared? What are my
Yeah.
like minimum standards for what we're going to expect this party to look like? We want to have a band. We want to have this. We want to have these pieces. Like you got to start mapping that stuff out. So you're like, these are the minimum things I'm willing to accept and the standards that I'm going to hold myself to every single week, every single month leading up to this event.
Now, you could take a personal approach to this too. Say it's like, well, I want to fit into that tux from our wedding on this at this party too. And so one of my actions in order to be able to achieve that is I also need to get into shape, right? And so now we have a minimum standard of exercising a certain amount every single week in order to drop the weight to get into that tux for that event as well. You can use these goals and then set all these other little things associated with it that create these standards for yourself that also then help you kind of transform who you are or who your business is or what that event is by the time it arrives. Because as James Clear says, right, Garrett, we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our standards. And so if the goal is I'm going to have this big party, but we don't have any standards associated with the experience, the people, the finances, the structure, the organization, then, it's going to be, some people pull it off.
Yeah.
Some people pull it off on accident, right? Or maybe there's some level of purposeful intention. But when you get that level, now all of a sudden, like, I know exactly where we're going.
That's the whole piece out of this, Matt, is we don't want to be on accident. We watch so many people that on accident show up through this business kind of going like, this isn't really what I want to look like. But you know what? We had a party. We had a party. We got people together. It worked. We'll do it differently next year. And next year they do it exactly the same way again. They kind of throw it together last minute. They make it kind of come together. We had a party. Yeah, we did it. It was good. But this is about taking the accident or the on accident side out of this and saying, okay, let's go at this with intention and let's really start working through exactly what this goal is and how we're going to create it so that when it shows up, we're like, this is exactly what I wanted. This is exactly what I was expecting. And again, it's funny. It's like it's like baking a cake. You put the right ingredients in the right order, you're going to get what you want at the end of it. It's the same way in business. It's the same way with any goal that you have in front of you. And any goal that you've put out there that maybe you've not hit, or it's always been this thing that's just out of being obtainable, it's usually because you're not have the right ingredients in there to get to it. It's really all it comes down to.
No doubt. No doubt. Well, so when you set those standards, you got the ingredients in place. Now we need to identify what are the resources that I need to do these actions, right? Or to complete these items. And even if you have them, I would just list everything out, whatever it is. And then you got to then circle or highlight what are the ones that I don't have that I need to go attain, right? Because you want to get clarity on that as well. A lot of people, again, will say, I'm going to go do these things. And then they'll just look at resources as this separate thing. I've seen so many people saying, this is how I want to run my communication, how I want to run my marketing. And then they go sign up for something that doesn't even serve them in that capacity because they were looking at resources and their actions as two separate things. But the resources and tools are there to support the actions. So once you identify it, now we can see, hey, what do we have and what do we need, right? Because maybe you don't have the 600 person ballroom yet. You're like, hey, I got this whole grand vision. We're going to have all these 600 person resource. I need a place for this to take place, right? We need to book the room. We need to find somewhere that has the capacity and get this thing done. Whereas, hey, maybe we have the email system and the invitation system to invite everybody already.
Yeah,
right?
or you take someone like Dwan, and I guarantee you, Dwan is part of the Veterans Association in his town, in his area there. And you look at that and you say, okay, so Dwan's got this tool and resource at his fingertips. Where if I wanted to throw a 600-person veteran party, I'm looking around going, okay, well, what are my resources? Well, I have friends that are veterans. That is my best resource I have up front when it comes to people that I can work with to grow and build this. I need to start connecting with them, and I'd make a list of all the people that I know that are veterans and have that background.
Mm-hmm.
You need to start pulling in all the pieces of saying, okay, I know what I want to create. What are all the things that I have that are going to help me get there? And for some people, they're going to have better tools and better resources. It doesn't mean you can't have the goal. It doesn't mean you can't go there. You just got to know what you're working with so you can say, okay, I got these tools and there's maybe some I need to go out there and I need to acquire. I need to go find some of these other things. Maybe I just need to go have a meeting at the Veterans Hall and go down there and talk to the leader of it, organize what I need to do and see if they're willing to even be a part of this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point, and I think people can start to maybe see, oh, I see how this is coming together, right? But we're not done. We still have a few more things that we need to do. It's like, wait, but no, I got my goal. I got the actions. I narrowed it down to the core ones that I need to do. I set standards and identified tools and resources. What else is left? It's like, well, how about let's enjoy this journey?
Yeah.
Let's set some milestones. Let's set some points where we're going to be able to say, hey, we made it to this point. We can celebrate a little bit. Doesn't mean like you're going to throw a big party because you built your invite list, but could be like, hey, cool, give yourself a pat on the back. Or it could just be a good milestone to give you the mental, knowledge of like, hey, I hit this mark. Now I can go to the next thing. Just like video games, Garrett.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm looking at milestones. We kind of jumped around some different topics here of like what goals would be. I like this. I'm going to run with the veterans one here just for a second, because when you look at like a milestone might be securing an event center that we're going to be able to have this party at. Maybe it's a place in the park. Maybe it's an actual, physical building that we're going to be using. But at some point, you're going to be sitting back and saying, okay, on the way to accomplishing this goal. Because a lot of times, Matt, we don't celebrate until the goal is done. And hopefully we get there. Maybe we will. We'll do everything we can to get there. But there's having these wins along the way so you can sit back and say, okay, major milestone in us being able to put this on, acquiring the place that we're actually going to have this event. Major milestone, maybe in getting this thing coming together, is saying, I've got my first 50 people that are RSVP'd to this event. Like, that is my number one goal around this. And I'm going to be able to celebrate as I'm on my way to the big goal, the big thing of the event actually going on. And it will help you start to chip these things away and make it come to life.
Yeah, and milestones could be securing sponsors too, even at it going on this event goal here during one of our individual masterminds that we have for our one-on-one clients. They were talking about, how they're setting up events, their ideas for that. And Kevin McCarthy had mentioned, he's like, yeah, I actually had like Tidal sponsored the margarita machine. They just slapped their name on the side. It's like, I basically was able to host a party for free because I was able to gather some sponsors that we're able to supply some of this stuff too. And so that could be a milestone. Hey, we secured our main sponsors to provide these things to make this event. So you look at all those kind of checkpoints and points along that journey. It creates more engagement for yourself because it gives you little steps along the way to get excited for. And you also get that little dopamine kind of hit of like, whoo, which then encourages you to go to the next level and be like, here's the next thing that now I'm going to get done to make sure that this thing comes to life. Well,
and that brings us to the next place, Matt, is actually once you have all these milestones starting to come out, now we got to schedule this thing out and basically say, okay, let's look at all the places that these things need to happen by. Here's the end date. Like right now, people are going to be doing a lot of goals for December 31st, but the veterans party, that's not a December 31st goal. That's going to happen in November. We're going to put that on the calendar. And you might have other ones that you're like, hey, this is when the timeline is. And so that's what I love about how we built this out, Matt, is that it's not, you're literally looking at each goal individually instead of the entire year. There is the entire year. We're going to work on that. But it's taking these goals out and mapping them out of just saying, okay, this one's going to happen by this timeline. This is the end date for this. And here's all the milestones that are going to come along with this thing so we can celebrate it. Anything else you want to add on around scheduling? Because I think it's just that
I mean, that's pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's pretty straightforward.
The one question to ask yourself when you're scheduling is like, what is the order of things? Are there things that definitely need to happen before other things can happen? And so when you work backwards on those deadlines, it puts more importance on those earlier deadlines because it's like, well, I can't get this rolling until this is done and this is essential. So that really does need to be done 2 months before. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to do this phase of it to be ready. And so just that's the one thing I would add to that is ask yourself, what is the order of things that need to happen so that we have a really good plan that keeps us on track and on time. Right.
And then this leads us to roadblocks, man.
This is my favorite part, man. Not my favorite part, but it's a part that's not commonly talked about, which is why I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and it's getting into that place of like, what is all the stuff that is the unexpected, the things that's like could show up, might show up. How do we get ahead of it? How do we have a plan around it, either to head it off right now so it's like I never need to worry about that, or at least a backup plan as we get closer to that goal so we can still accomplish it, even though it might show up a little bit differently. It's like having that, we want the wedding outside, but we also know that it's springtime and we could have a rainstorm that blows through. So what is our backup plan? Which I laugh is because that was my wife and I. We were supposed to get married on the grass, and then it was like last minute, no, we're getting married inside. Like
It's such a great point.
Where sometimes there's no backup plan for that. It's a mad scramble of we never thought this would ever happen. Like, what do you mean? We don't have an inside to go have this wedding yet. And I think those are like getting ahead of it. Veterans, it's like in November, a party like that, you're probably going to say, I'm going to head off that roadblock way early on. This is an inside party.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be cold and yeah, let's do that inside. I think this is great. A lot of people get their plan together, Garrett, and even just looking at just a regular business plan, they're like, cool, I'm going to go do these things. Life's going to be perfect and I'm going to hit my goal. It's like, yeah, but what if you get sick? What if your kids get sick? What if, you have a challenge in the family? What if certain things go really well and all of a sudden it moves us in a different path? What if your spouse gets that promotion that they've always wanted and now instead of being in Charleston, you're moving to, Knoxville? Things that could happen that when you think about them and all people are like, well, I don't want to think about them because I'll manifest them. It's like, no, it's not like we're setting intention on them. Yep. We're trying to identify the things. What happens if the talent that we have come into this party? What happens if Santa's sick at our Christmas party, right? What happens if we don't have the right ingredients for the cookies that we were going to make? What happens if nobody shows? What happens along the way if I don't build the list that I need to build? And you identify these roadblocks, Garrett, and then you take it and you say, okay, what can we handle now? It's like, well, I can solve the knowing enough people by following through on my actions, right? We can solve maybe the Santa by having a backup. And then some of the things you won't be able to solve, but you can build your toolkit. And this connects right into driving, right? Because like if you're going on a road trip, you may want to have a spare tire or a tire kit or whatever.
I actually said this to Matt the other day. I said, when you change a serpentine belt in the car, throw the old serpentine belt in the back, in the storage area in the back of the car. And he's like, why would you do that? I'm like, because you have a backup. Like, because just in case. He's like, oh yeah, that's how your brain works.
But that makes so much sense.
Those are the little things. It's just like, how do we prevent these potential roadblocks that might come up? And what's interesting, and we're, again, keeping this in line with cars, I've always joked that if I have the tools that we're safe. If I've planned for the worst case scenario, I actually didn't need any of that stuff. I just recently took a road trip and I threw a big bunch of tools in the back of the car and I put them in there and I looked at them and I said, I'm putting you in here because I know I won't need you. But if I do, I'm okay.
It's sometimes these little things that can make an experience so much better because you have that just sense of comfort, right?
Yeah.
And you never need it, right? It's like having a med kit in the car. Like you never want to have to use something like that. But it's nice to know that it's there and it comes in handy when one of the kids gets a little scratch and you're like, oh, I need a Band-Aid. Good thing I got this med kit because I got a little Band-Aid in there that I can solve that issue with. And that's what you want to look at for these roadblocks is, okay, how do we build our toolkit? Because now you're prepared. Now you can go on this journey. You can go after this goal and things that come up. We're not saying this is going to be guaranteed and foolproof because there are some things that we can't plan for. But if you're as ready as you possibly can be, you're probably going to be better off than anybody else. And you're going to end up with an experience that people are going to be happy with. Even if it went to the extreme of like, well, a hurricane came in, so we had to cancel the party, but you did all this really cool stuff leading up to it. It's probably going to be easier to shift to something else a week later or whatever, where people are going to still be like, hey, that was a great experience. Nothing you could have done about that hurricane coming in. And you're still going to have a good time, whatever happens after that.
Well, and I think looking at these roadblocks just one last time, I think you got to also look at like, what is the likelihood of that roadblock coming up? A wedding outdoors in the spring, we were like 50-50. We had a 50-50 chance that it was going to be able to happen outdoors or it was going to be indoors, because where we were having it, like we've joked over the years of all the rainstorms that have happened on, May 5th, where we're just like, yep, that we wouldn't have worked this year. Like we would have been indoors no matter what. And there's very few times that we're like, we would have been able to have the wedding outside if we did it on this year. I think it's one of those, like, you got to kind of look at these roadblocks and say, okay, what are the ones that are ranked very high, that the potential of that actually happening? Well, let's prepare for those ones the most. Some of these, it's like, if it happens, there's not much we could have done about it. Like you just said, a hurricane. It's like, yes, is there a roadblock that we could have a hurricane come through? Yes. Was there a way that we can work around that in that moment? Probably not. Everything is probably going to be put on hold. Everything's going to be shut down. But there's a lot that you can get ahead of. And I would say find those ones you're like, I can prepare for, I can get ahead of that. And let's put some pieces in place so that if it happens, it happens. It's okay. We got a plan for it. We can make it around it.
And I love that you got to use brainstorming as this process, because even with the wedding, it's like you could have an indoor venue, but it's like, but we really want to have it on the beach. Cool. Well, how much does it cost to buy one umbrella for everybody attending the wedding? Like a good umbrella that will like at least keep them out of the rain a little bit. Yeah, it's going to think about the experience that people will have if it does rain. And if it doesn't, all right, you spend some money on some umbrellas and you go donate them afterwards.
Is this just for rain matter, or is this the hurricane preparation? Because I have a very interesting picture in my head of everybody with umbrellas on the beach with a hurricane coming through.
Yeah, I think that would have
but we're
a very opposite effect.
We're doing it.
It would definitely have an opposite effect of what you want to experience.
I planned this. This was the goal.
Umbrellas can probably pick up wind pretty well. Be a great test of grip strength. That's for sure.
I never give up on my goals.
Had to be this day.
Your
I picture that guy that the meme that everybody posts now, like every hurricane. I forget, like it was several years ago. The guy like out with the American flag, like in the hurricane, like head down in the wind.
It's Florida man.
And like that's the vision I now have of somebody like at their wedding. We're like, we're gonna have it no matter what.
Yeah.
Well, so Garrett, that kind of wraps up all the processes. So those are like 7 steps that we put together. So you have, all the things you could do for the goal. You identify then the critical tasks, the critical actions that you're going to commit to for it. Identify those standards, identify the tools and resources, come up with your milestones and celebrations, get it calendared out, and then plan and identify for those roadblocks. That's a great way to build out how you're going to achieve a goal. I mean, I got to say the chances of getting to that goal, if you build it out now, have just drastically increased.
Yeah. And that's what I find. And we started this whole thing off, Matt, with you saying like, a lot of people are like, here's my goal and let's go after it for this year. I want to make this income. Great. Let's go after it. And they just kind of go, okay, I'm focusing on that goal. I keep focusing on it. I actually had a gentleman a while back that said to me, I keep talking about that goal every single day and focusing on it, but there was never really a plan built to actually get to the goal. And that's what I love about this, is it just allows you to basically take that goal, break it all down, know exactly what's going to cause it to happen, minimum standards, how are we going to show up, what are these roadblocks, we get it all mapped out. It's really kind of hard not to show up at the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to you now, your level of discipline and follow through at that point, which, that's a whole nother story. It's a whole nother podcast. There's a whole nother several podcasts.
You are the linchpin. Right. There's the name of the podcast. You are.
You are. Well, and then the question is, how do you then remove yourself as that linchpin? Oh man, we could go down so many routes. Well, Garrett, this is a really fun one to explore, man. I've had a lot of fun with you and Sarah building out kind of our new GPS is what we're calling it. And it's been really fun seeing it all come together and watching everybody go through this experience. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to have everybody with their finalized GPS so that they can go take on 2025. I guess by the time this episode released, they've now had it.
They'll have it.
And so I'll highlight again, if you guys want to go and use the cheat code to go through that process, and this goal part is a very, very small part of that process, just go to lifeat10tenths.com, sign up for the 11 Circle 7-day trial, and you'll have access to everything about this and even more, because all of our stuff is recorded, all the live coaching, all of our guests, they're all in there.
And when I say cheat code, I know there's people sitting out there going like, so what was the code again? What was it? The code, the cheat part of it is the 7-day free trial. That's what
which everybody gets. You don't need to do anything special. It's literally right there for you.
Go into the 7-day free trial. You can get everything you want out of there. Figure out that's the right spot for you. So appreciate you, Matt.
Yeah. Appreciate you too. Appreciate everybody tuning in. If you have a goal, if this was helpful for you in terms of thinking about your goal, we would love to hear it. Drop it in the comments below. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening on another platform that doesn't have comments, find us on Instagram and shoot us a message and just say, hey, here's what this episode did for me. But if you're on YouTube, drop that comment and share. Other people might see it and get some insight from you, and so that we can all collaborate together as a community, which is really awesome. And don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know that when we post new stuff, which is typically every Monday and Thursday, but who knows? Maybe we'll drop some special YouTube stuff too, in addition to the podcast, which will be a lot of fun.
Well, everybody, thank you so much. We'll be back soon.
Take care, y'all.